This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. I'm Sal Berry, and with me is Clemente Lisi. And today we're going to talk about the 2026 Stanley Cup Final and its champions, the Carolina Hurricanes, who won their first Stanley Cup since 2006. 20 years ago is when they won their first cup, and then 20 years later, they win their second cup. So it was, I think, one of the best series that in recent memory for me. I mean, probably within 10 or 11 years, I'm really thinking about a series that I enjoyed this much. We'll also talk a little bit about some hockey cards that have to do with the Cup champions. So anyway, Clemente, how have you been? I know you watched all the games, but you've also been watching, of course, the NBA Finals, and congratulations to the Knicks. I don't know if you're a huge basketball fan, but it's always fun when your hometown wins. I mean, did you know any of the players, or were you just kind of more of just, the Knicks are on, I'll watch it? Or...
Yeah, no, I've been a casual NBA viewer in the last, my heyday was the 90s. I haven't really watched with the intensity since the early 2000s. But yeah, no, I mean, I did follow the playoff run because once they got through the opening round, then it was like, okay. And then they're in the conference finals, and, the city was obviously into this whole thing. And 53 years ago, the last time they won it, which is not in my lifetime. So first time won it in my lifetime, which is kind of crazy because, and there is a tradition, I think, not just in New York, but just in general, when your arena your team shares an arena with like a basketball team. A lot of NHL teams and NBA teams are in the same arena. Mm-hmm. You're kind of a fan of both because on every other night, one of them is playing, that kind of thing, and this reminded me of 94, because in 94, the Rangers won the cup. The Knicks got to the finals that year and lost, and the World Cup was in New York too. So the World Cup is in New York again. And then you also you had a lot of crossover because we had a big game here over the weekend at MetLife Stadium. We had Brazil versus Morocco. And then by the time that game let out, the Knicks game was just starting. So like you're seeing all these images of people in Times Square, like all these Brazil jerseys, and they're all celebrating the Knicks championship. It was kind of this huge. So New York was really, big party atmosphere all over the place. There was a little bit of violence, obviously, and that's unfortunate. That's not just a New York thing. That happens, I feel like, with a lot of championships, teams. Do this. And they weren't doing this 20 or 30 years ago. This is a newer phenomenon in some places. It's funny. New York has had lots of winning teams in the last couple of years, especially in baseball with the Yankees. Baseball fans just don't do this kind of thing. But I think hockey fans, basketball fans, fans of other sports seem to resort to violence sometimes in a championship. And we know college teams do this too. It's not to my liking, obviously, but congratulations to the Knicks. It's good for New York. It's fun to see a team that hasn't won in so long. And, another interesting stat, the Knicks are now the 8th team to win an NBA title in 8 years. So talent is really spread out across the league, that there's no dynasties being built. A little bit like in hockey, right?
And I'm okay with that because, I mean, listen, I grew up during...
Oh, the Bulls, right?
Well, I don't know if I grew up. I was, I was 15 when they won their first championship, or
right.
16 maybe.
We were high schoolers.
I was like, high school and college. So, I mean, just that whole span of time. So, of course I enjoyed it because I grew up with that. And, I saw the Blackhawks win 3 times in 6 years, and it should have been 4 times in 6 years, if not for that one overtime goal by Alec Martinez of the Kings in 2014 that I still sometimes have nightmares about. Yeah. But wasn't that the year they played the Rangers? Was it 2014?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because like one of the guys I played hockey with was a huge Rangers fan, and we were just kind of looking at each other and shaking our heads, and we're like, man, we wanted this to be the Blackhawks versus the Rangers. How awesome would that have been? Yeah. I mean, of course, LA's a bigger television market. I shouldn't even put up finger quotes. I was going to say market. Yeah, it's a bigger market. It's the number 2 market, but like, right. So okay, I guess having the number 1 market versus the number 2 market, yeah, but come on, Blackhawks, Kings. I'd argue that the Blackhawks had more hockey fans at that point. But
and you like original 6 teams playing each other, but whatever. I mean,
that would have been Oh, that would have been sweet. But yeah, so so I grew up during a dynasty and it was nice, but I think at the same time it's just like super boring. You know what I mean? You look back to like the 80s and how like the Edmonton Oilers were like winning. It was either the Islanders or the Oilers with a couple of outliers, you know what I mean? And it was, you look at like the really good Blackhawk teams from like the early 80s that, like could have like, they either lost, I think one year they lost to the Canucks and another year they lost to the Oilers. So, which makes sense to lose to the Oilers, but like the other years, it's like, really, the Canucks? Okay. I mean, yeah, well, sometimes, you have those teams that make that good, that they play above their pay grade and then they get to the finals. And then once they get to the finals, it's like they're just kind of just wasting time. But how's the World Cup, just before I start talking about hockey, how's the World Cup been going so far?
I mean, it's been great. There's been lots of goals, obviously, which people like, and it's being played in Canada, the US, and Mexico. So it feels like it's here, which is great. And the US had a really great game on Friday night. They beat Paraguay 4-1. They never scored 4 goals in a World Cup game before the US, so good start for them. And I was noticing there's a lot of hockey and soccer crossover, not just the piece I wrote about that Upper Deck set from '94, but there's a commercial where these two guys are at a bar, and I can't even tell you what the commercial's for, which is probably bad on them. And they're talking about how they think the U.S. can win. And at the end of the bar is Michael Ruzioni, who's like, "What, you don't believe in miracles?" Which is hilarious. And the coach of the U.S. is a guy born in Argentina, a guy named Mauricio Pochettino, and he's totally fascinated by the Miracle on Ice story. And I think U.S. Hockey sent him a hockey jersey when they won the gold. I think he's trying to motivate the players by taking a piece of probably the most iconic USA victory ever, because the Dream Team in basketball was supposed to win the gold medal, but the 1980 team wasn't supposed to win gold in hockey. So there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of, I noticed the Rangers have done this, the Dallas Stars have done it. They've made soccer jerseys out of their uniform. So you can get like a New York Rangers soccer jersey, but it's in the New York Rangers colors and logo. So it's kind of cool. So
now, does it have a Rangers logo, or does it have like a Best Buy logo on the front?
No. It's the Rangers made it themselves.
No, because soccer jerseys, I would wear a soccer jersey, but they're always like, they're just ridiculous with the ads. Like when you say, "Oh, I like that professional soccer team," I would wear their jersey, right? Like we got the Chicago Fire, which I know is like Major League Soccer, which I get as a joke to the rest of the world when it comes to soccer. But like, okay, if I wanted to be like, hip and wear like, say, like a Man U jersey, right? But what's across the chest?
Yeah, like a logo from a corporate logo, which is funny because soccer teams have done this forever. And now it's seeped into, like, I was watching the NBA finals, and of course the players have like advertising on their jerseys now. So American teams are picking up on this. It's kind of funny. American teams have not always done this because America is the land of capitalism and corporate greed and making money out of everything. And it's kind of funny how the Europeans were the first. If you go back to the 70s, soccer jerseys did not have any advertising on it. That became in the 80s, that became a thing. But you're right. If you buy a soccer jersey, you do become a walking billboard, but the advertising sometimes becomes part of people remember that jersey, like, "Oh yeah, that was the logo, that was cool." So it's got its own subculture in the soccer jersey world. The New York Rangers one doesn't have any corporate logos.
Right.
It just says New York Rangers. So it's cool if you're into hockey and soccer. I noticed last year at Fanatics Fest, this was happening where the NFL had made soccer jerseys of all the NFL teams, kind of a crossover. So you had like Rob Gronkowski wearing, I think it was a Patriots jersey, but it was a soccer jersey. It was so weird to see that. It was like, oh, that's just weird that it's like if the Patriots were a soccer team, the jersey would look like that, and they just had the name across the front, Patriots. So the World Cup has been super exciting. It's only been almost a week, so it's early. The World Cup is 39 days, 48 teams, 104 games. It's a long slog. And so we'll see. But the knockout round in about a week and a half, 2 weeks is really when the excitement happens, because then it becomes a bracket. And that's the part. So I think a lot of people are waiting for that, frankly. But I've been writing about it. I've been going to games, covering it. So it's been good.
Where can people read your writing if they're interested in soccer? They know where they could read your hockey writing, but if they
Yeah, it's true.
want to read your soccer writing, where would they find that?
Yeah, so I have my own Substack called Planet Soccer that I write on there regularly, and then I am covering the World Cup for Forbes Sports, and so you can
Not a big deal.
not a big deal, but so it's nice to be able to write about it for on a major platform. And I gotta tell you, the one byproduct of writing for such a big platform is I get so many press releases from publicists trying to sell me on all kinds of really strange World Cup tie-ins. I think every American company is trying to do like a tie-in with the World Cup, even if they're not a corporate sponsor and they're trying to get media attention for some really weird stuff. I'm sure you've gotten releases from people over the years and you're like, I'm never going to write about this, but thanks.
There was one release that I got. It was the weirdest. No, I don't know. Okay, remember like when NFTs were like a thing, and then remember
Yes.
when they were like not a thing, but there were still people who like insisted they were a thing.
Yes.
Like, so there was like that NHL. I forgot what it was called, but they did some official NFT thing that you'd buy like packs of, and I don't even remember the name of it. And all I know is that they didn't pester me, but they were very persistent. They really wanted coverage. And when I finally said, okay, you know what, I'm actually writing a feature story for Hockey News about this, then they're like, oh, well, our product isn't ready. I go, well, that's okay. This article is probably not going to get published for like 4 weeks. So just let me talk to your brand manager. Well, you know, and then all of a sudden, it's like they didn't want to talk to me. And I don't know why, because they wanted to talk to me, and then they didn't want to talk to me, and then so I very snarkily in the article said that they declined to comment, like
after bothering you. No, but it's funny. There's a couple of companies that are hobby related. I'm not going to name them here, that are constantly emailing me for coverage. And like the one time that I wanted to do it, then they were like, well, I don't think we can do it. And they had a spokesperson they wanted to put out there, a pretty famous athlete. And they were like, oh, they offered him up to me. And then they were like, oh, we can't do it. It was almost like they wanted to gauge interest without actually ever following through. And so that is annoying for a writer, because it's like, we're busy and we're writing about a million things. And frankly, I'm not even thinking about your product. They're looking for product placement. We're looking for people to put in our stories about something, a bigger trend, a bigger piece, or an announcement they're making. And it's quite frustrating. And I know publicists have their own job. And sometimes I think there's a disconnect between the publicist and the PR team and then the actual company, and I think when the publicist goes back to the company's like, no, we're not ready. And it's like, oh, you just told us to go aggressive, email everybody. And then when we get a bite, you say no. And it's, so in my mind, I've kind of blacklisted some of these companies in my mind. And if they email me, I just delete it. I'm like, I don't care.
I think they want to see who you are first, because I remember like I did an oral history about the Mighty Ducks and the movie, not the hockey team. And I remember like I had some trouble getting certain people to talk to me, but like when Time Magazine did an article about the Mighty Ducks, everybody wanted to talk to Time Magazine. But if you think about it, who's going to care more about reading about the making of the Mighty Ducks? People who read Time Magazine or people who read the Hockey News?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right?
Right, but but the other one has a higher status. So I was a little peeved that like, okay, their publicist obviously got them to do their story, but not my story. So
that happens. This is kind of behind the curtain for a lot of writers. The public doesn't know all this. Obviously, they don't know. But I used to always call the making of the hot dog. You don't want to see how in journalism is almost like that. It's like people see the finished product. They don't see the stuff that we do behind the scenes, all the beaks and the claws, like in terms of putting together a story, how stories come about, publicists and chasing people sometimes.
Oh my God, just the time that we spend and waste, like trying to track people down, pin people down, get people to talk to us. And then, especially when you get like excuses, I mean, it's
hard. That's the worst part of the job. The best part is the research, the interviewing, the writing. It's not the chasing or figuring out a time, but even the back and forth. I mean, sometimes I'll look at some of the emails I've had with people, and it's like, oh, that was 27 emails back and forth just to get that down, like,
Right.
you
Just to,
know,
yeah.
just to schedule a time even. So yeah, it's frustrating, but we tell stories, so we have to find the characters to be able to tell those stories. And you've done these oral histories; those are predicated entirely on interviews as opposed to writing around it. So
Right.
that's even more work. Like you need someone to sit with you for a good while and go into some detail because you want to be able to tell that story almost like a play. And
Right.
that's more work. It's less writing, but more work in the interviewing part, and which people don't understand.
So what did you think of the Stanley Cup Final? I mean, I got thoughts, but
Yeah,
I know,
I'll give you some just generic thoughts automatically, which is just
yeah.
thinking about the last podcast we had and
Yep.
how I felt about where the series was going. And I think the Hurricanes just flipped the script totally on this. Like I did not see this coming, which was, and people might say, what did you see coming? Well, I didn't see Brandon Bussi, for example, becoming like this outstanding goaltender all of a sudden. And in game 6, he had the shutout, stopped all 22 shots. Like that's a turning point. And I didn't see Jordan Staal win the Conn Smythe because frankly, I just didn't think the Hurricanes were going to win the series. So I thought, okay, well, all the storylines, all the talking points are going to be on the Golden Knights side, Mitch Marner and all that. And it turned out that I don't know if if the Golden Knights had a meltdown at some point. I don't know where, the series was 6 games ultimately. And but it went the other way. And I don't know what the Hurricanes what they did in those first couple of games wasn't what they did in the final couple of games. So, in the end they were 16-3. Um, great puck possession, great defense,
Great
great
defense.
on the face off. Like ultimately, I think the Golden Knights they didn't fall apart. It was more that the Hurricanes they were feeling out the series early on, and then they really got their act together at the end. And it was a total team effort, which always needs to be, I think, ultimately. And we can talk more about the Conn Smythe and the defense and the goaltending and all that. But I think those generically are my thoughts about how. And I think there's a lot of hyperbole after a series. Oh, this is the greatest ever. I don't know about greatest ever, but it is in the top 5 for sure, top 10 in terms of entertainment, the back and forth. 6 games is pretty close, right? And in the end, I think it was just a great showcase for the league. And I think the Hurricanes ultimately deserved it. They played really amazing. The last 3 games, especially, was truly fun to watch.
I believe that you, Tim, and myself, when we did our predictions 2 episodes back, I think I think the 3 of us said Vegas in 6, but
Correct.
then we said, but if the Hurricanes win, they're going to do it in 7. So we
Right.
thought that it would have been Vegas in 6 or Hurricanes in 7,
Right.
but it was the Hurricanes in 6. So we got the team wrong and we got the number of games wrong. Um, like like I said before, my head said the Golden Knights were going to win. My
Mm.
heart wanted the Hurricanes to win. Now, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I'm a Blackhawks fan. I mean, there's teams that I like more than other teams, but and even if like say like I'm supposed to hate the Red Wings because the Blackhawks and the Red Wings were rivals, but
Right.
I like to see good hockey. You know what I mean? Like I
Sure.
like to see good hockey, especially if like my hometown team is in it, then I just want to see a good series. And this was one of the best series that I remember seeing. And I've pretty much watched every Stanley Cup since 89. It doesn't mean I've caught every single game because a lot of times it was kind of hard to catch every game. Sometimes they were on Sports Channel or ESPN or the Outdoor Life Network, or what I mean? Like they were just like, or sometimes you miss a game because you have to miss a game. But like as far as just excitement and what makes a series exciting, you have close games, you
Right.
have surprises, maybe you set some records along the way, and that had all of these. And when you said that you didn't see You didn't see Brandon Bussi stepping in, taking over the crease for Carolina and winning those games, or Jordan Staal winning the Conn Smythe. What makes sports to me so exciting is that sometimes you don't see those things coming. Many times you don't see those things coming. And I'll give you a parallel. How many times have you gone to a movie and 30 minutes in, you're just like, I know what's going to happen. Like, not like because you read a spoiler, but because you've seen this movie before.
It's a predictable formula, correct?
It's a predictable formula. Like, I remember, like, I was watching, God, what was it? It was like the Wonder Woman movie, like the first one that came out in like the 2000s. And I remember, like, towards the end of the movie, I was just zoning out because I already knew what was going to happen. They were going to have a big fight and whatever. You know what I mean? So, like, my mind was just kind of like, I was just kind of passively paying attention because now I felt like the movie was kind of going through the motions. So I was just kind of going through the motions of just watching the movie, but I wasn't really like paying attention to like what's happening because it was going to unfold the way that we knew it was going to unfold. And I think it wasn't with that movie, but it was with the Tron Legacy movie that came out in like 2009, where I'm just like, this sucks. This sucks because somebody didn't spend enough time writing a good story, or somebody in marketing said, oh, let's do this so that we can make a sequel later. You know what I mean? Like, it's obviously fiction is fake, but you watch a Stanley Cup Final and it's a story, but there's nothing fake about it. If the 37-year-old team captain in the twilight of his career wins MVP, it's because he had a damn good series, not because somebody decided, oh, well, let's give it a storybook ending. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so that's why I don't say I love sports, because really I love hockey. The other sports I just I put up with, but hockey, that's my thing. So we had those records. We had some great things that happened. Just to give a quick recap before we get into a deeper dive about some of the records and such. But like, okay, so Game 3 happens. Golden Knights are up 2-1. That's after they win in double overtime. All right, so Game 2 goes to overtime. Game 3 goes to overtime. Game 1 is close. Game 2 is close. Game 3 is close. They've all been close games so far, right? Actually, honestly, Game 3 was kind of looking like, all right, Vegas is just going to cruise, right? Because they were up. They put up those 4 goals in the second period, and just like, okay, Carolina can't do anything. Is this just going to be like, is it going to be over in 5 games? But then they mount that comeback. They put in Brandon Bussi. And then they make a comeback, and then they force overtime. And yes, they lose in overtime, but that was the turning point. But we didn't realize it was a turning point.
Correct.
Good story, a good movie. There is a turning point, and sometimes you don't even realize it until later on. You go, oh.
Well, that's the thing with this series. You really can't know that until it's over. And Game 4 was going to be pivotal because, let's be honest, if the Golden Knights had won that game, well, then it puts the Hurricanes in a tough spot.
Yep.
So the Hurricanes win this thing, it's tied, and now it's like, okay, now anything can happen. Now we're basically back to 0. And so that's where I think Game 5 and Game 6, that's where the Hurricanes really ultimately shined.
Yeah, and so for Game 4, you had Jordan Staal put up 2 goals. And okay, so this is a sign of things to come, or a sign of things that's happening, because he scored in Game 1, he scored in Game 2, he scored in Game 3, he scored 2 goals in Game 4. Then Game 5, the Hurricanes win, and it was like, it was not counting an empty net goal, which Game 4 had, so we don't count that. So we would just say that's a 1-goal win, but this was actually a 2-goal win, Game 5. There was actually like not any empty netters in there. So, so now you have Andrei Svechnikov put in 2 goals. Ehlers, insane, because he gets 2 assists in Game 4, gets 3 assists in Game 5. Of course, the Hurricanes with Pavel Dorofeyev, the Golden Knights, and Pavel Dorofeyev scores 2 goals for them. Bussi gets his second start, gets his second win. And then in game 6, wow. Like, now I know that I said earlier, well, so it looked like, I don't want to say it was boring, but you're kind of expecting back and forth, and we were getting that, right? Like, where it felt like no lead was safe, right? Would you agree with that for the most part?
For the most part, yes.
For the most part. But then game 6, it just felt like, okay, this is it. They're just smothering them. The Hurricanes are just smothering the Knights. There was like, I remember the commentator saying something like how Vegas had only gotten like 3 shots on net in like a 15-minute span or something. Like, I think let me take a look at the shots here really quick. Shots on goal. Okay. Second period, the Golden Knights were limited to 3 shots on net. That's it. And they were even saying, well, the tough thing for Bussi is that he's facing so few shots, so it's hard to stay sharp when you're only seeing,
right,
1 shot every 7 minutes or whatever, right? So,
well, to quote Tim would say, defense wins championships. Tim is right. And in this case, the Vegas Golden Knights had a great offense, but none of that matters if you can't get shots off and you can't get, you can't put shots on target. Your percentages start to drop, and then that's why it's low scoring. But at the same time, they know they're winning faceoffs. They're doing all the right things to be able to then get the goals they need, and ultimately, then I think Game 5 is where things totally flipped around. And after they won Game 5, I thought, okay, I think the Golden Knights are done here. But and I think this was a pivotal moment.
Yeah. And then how about Taylor Hall getting the opening goal of the game and getting not only the opening goal, but what stood as the game-winning goal?
Right.
I mean,
I never would have guessed that.
Dude's been in the league for 16 years. He's played on 7 different teams, and
right.
A year ago he's a healthy scratch for the Chicago Blackhawks.
What's interesting is that in a league with so many young players that are dynamic and all that, in this series it was like, other than the goaltending, but it was like these older guys who finally had these moments, these individual moments that then put the Hurricanes over the top. So it's interesting. Someone like Jordan Staal, this is not a young person and the young guy, and so it's kind of nice to see, because some of these guys I think really deserve. Some of these guys are journeymen, but some of these guys deserve, I think, to finally be able to win a championship, or at least do something really extraordinary in a series. Because like you said early on, it's unexpected, and that's what we want, because so much of sports, so much of hockey is talking about what we think is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And most of the time people are wrong, because they're looking at data, statistics, gut feeling, sympathies, what you want to happen. And then, of course, on paper, everybody looks good. On paper, I thought the Golden Knights were the best team. And turns out you have to play the games and figure it out. And that's what the Hurricanes did. And kudos to Brindamore. I think as a coach, he was pretty extraordinary here in helping put some of the pieces together. And like we've been saying, the Hurricanes have been building towards this for quite a while. This is not like an overnight success. This has taken almost a decade to get here. So,
and yeah, when you talk about, so I'm guilty of that. I think we're all guilty of some of those things. All those things that you mentioned, I'm guilty of. Where you say, looking at the statistics, gut feeling. What was the other thing? Your heart's desire. And what was the other one? I forgot.
But all the stuff that is really sports punditry, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, we are, because nobody knows what's going to happen. And, you can make predictions based on, past performances, or, either past performances or sometimes just those intangibles, oh, he's playing with an injury, or, he's a little roughed up, or perfect example, Hurricanes were rusty in their first game against Montreal, and they looked pretty terrible. And then, because Montreal got a bunch of shots on them because they were just out of practice. And then then they settled things down, and then they won the next 4 games. You know what I mean? So it's sometimes you can predict some things, but you can't most of the time, and that's what makes this fun, I think. I mean, that like you could still hope for something to happen, and it happens, but it doesn't always happen the way you want it to. Or you hope to, but you still get the result. Like your team wins, but maybe the guy that you want to get the MVP trophy doesn't get the MVP trophy.
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to give it to Mitch Marner. Oh well, that's not, and we could talk about that. Obviously,
I think we all were, but yeah, and the other thing too is that like when you talked about like on paper how the teams looked. So I was kind of like, when we were talking about this a couple weeks back, I was looking at like the Hurricanes and I'm like, they don't have a Mitch Marner. Who's their Mitch Marner, right? Like if you looked at, like, if you said, okay, the Penguins are playing the Capitals, right? Okay, Crosby, Ovechkin, right? Those, I don't want to say those guys cancel each other out, but each of them have a game-breaking superstar player, right? Like, or you'd look at like, I don't know, like I don't say the Blackhawks now because, okay, but they're not what they used to be. But, you pick two teams and usually there's like one guy that can, I don't want to say cancel out the other guy, but it's like it offsets the other guy.
Or it's what we call a subplot. It's like, oh, if this team's going to win, it's because of this player. And if that team's going to win, it's because of that player. And that player for the Hurricanes, I didn't know who that was.
No, and that's the thing. Like they had obviously a lot of good players in the playoffs, but it was like I looked and I'm like, well, yeah, the Hurricanes don't have a Marner, they don't have an Eichel, they don't have a Dornofiev, like they kind of do, but
no, but
you know what I mean? Like
but you look at
least those two, at least Marner and Eichel, those are like top line superstars on any team.
But when you're looking at your captains, that's what you want, the leadership. If you were to put head to head the captains, so you put like Staal versus Mark Stone. Mark Stone did not have a great series.
No.
And so maybe that's where there was, and then of course the Golden Knights made up for that by getting goals from all these other guys, and that's great.
And that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. But ultimately there was kind of a breakdown where they weren't scoring anymore. And if you're a goal scorer and you start to go into a bit of a drought at the wrong time, just like, and look, a couple of factors come together here. So the Golden Knights go into a bit of a drought. All of a sudden, the Hurricanes have a goalie that can stand on their head. Like, yeah, and this was a whole playoffs where I didn't see any of that happening. There weren't like these hot goalies in all these series. They really weren't. But this guy got hot at the right time, in the right moment. He was called upon, and people were calling him a rookie. He's not really a rookie goaltender. I mean, he's young, but he's not.
He's 27, so he's a year too old to be for Calder.
Yeah, and that's fine. And there's a reason for that, because there used to be, Russians would come into the league after playing 7 years in Russia, and they were rookies and they were 30 years old. So we don't want that like in the 90s. So I understand there's a cutoff, but it's a better story to say he's a rookie goaltender. It makes it very young, and he could be peaking right here. This could be like the best moment of his career. We never know, or he could win 4 more Stanley Cups. We just don't know. But you have these things happening at the same time. And that really becomes a difference maker. And then you have someone like Jordan Staal, who was the captain of the team. And he really, I think, to bring him up again, he really did ultimately break through. 5 goals, 5 to 6 goals in the final games, 6 games, 5 goals in the final 6 games. That just shows leadership. And then defensively was amazing. Face off, leadership, all that stuff matters in the end between two very close teams, because I think ultimately these were pretty evenly matched teams. I don't think that was a problem, and that often is the case in a final. But I think those made the differences in the last 2 games, and that's how you win the cup. I mean, you ultimately have to really dig deep to be able to do that. And let's not forget they had Logan Stankoven, other players that also provided like a lot of offense and a lot of other stuff they were doing that I think were a little bit unheralded.
And that's the other thing too. Like we talked, like the last couple of years when we talked about the Oilers losing the Stanley Cup Final, and we said, or at least I said, that like you need McDavid to be McDavid and do McDavid things, and you need Draisaitl to perform. but you need everybody to perform because McDavid is going to have an off day. And if you need your fourth line guy to get a goal, you know what I mean? You need scoring from everybody. Your team leaders still have to be your team leaders, and your McDavid still needs to have that, 2-goal, 2-assist game. But you also need to have your third liners chipping in and your fourth liners chipping in. It just can't be, if it's one guy dragging the whole team, then you basically have the Conn Smythe winner on the losing team, like McDavid. And that's kind of like, I mean, look, if, and yeah, it's okay. We'll just, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but yeah.
We can say, I know what you want to say, but yeah, the Oilers are trying to do something that has never been done in NHL history, which is, can we win the cup with just two great players and a bad goaltending? That's never happened. Nobody can ever do that. I know what you want to talk about. You want to talk about who the MVP should be and whether or not it could have been Mitch Marner and blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that.
If Marner had scored, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that. But, the other thing I wanted to say, very happy for Taylor Hall. I was excited when he joined the Blackhawks. I was disappointed about how it went down with the Blackhawks. And I don't blame him. I blame the Blackhawks because,
sure.
Yes, should Hall have been a first overall draft pick? Probably not. Is Hall a journeyman? Yes, he is. But he also is a Hart Trophy winner. He's also a good player. It's just he hasn't. I want to say he's a good player, not a great player. Like, great players are harder to trade. Good players, you could trade them for something else. Oh, we need a defenseman. Let's trade Taylor Hall, right? Like that's the.
Yeah, but no, I know, and that's true. But sometimes the Taylor Hall type player is, you need two or three of those players to finish the mosaic, the puzzle of your team, to be able to win. Otherwise, everyone's got a superstar. It doesn't mean anything. Like we use the Oilers as an example. The one superstar is nice. That's the guy that gets all the headlines. He scores all the goals, gets all the girls. Wonderful. But ultimately, to win the cup, you need to be this Hurricanes team is like a blue collar team. You have a lot of guys doing all the gritty stuff that doesn't get you the headlines, doesn't get you adoration from the press, and doesn't make you an MVP. But you can't win the cup if you don't have these kind of guys on the team. And every cup winning team has had them. This is why the Canes got Taylor Hall. They were like, look, if we're going to go on a run, we're going to need guys like this to really help us out. And we have the guys that can score the goals. We have some of those guys. Great. We have great defensemen. We got a great goalie, blah, blah, blah. But you really do need these guys. And then, of course, somebody score a big goal and then they get attention, like we're talking about him now here. But a lot of teams have guys like this. You need those guys to build that championship team. And ultimately, at the end of his career, he's going to say, well, I won a Stanley Cup and I did A, B, and C. And he's going to be the kind of guy that, if you're a Hurricanes fan, you're going to remember him forever because he helped you get somewhere that others couldn't. Big blockbuster signings that we in the media love is catnip to like chase after, and then ultimately they don't do anything for your team.
Yeah, exactly. So,
by the way, I say that as a Rangers fan, where there's always like some Messiah going to come along, and then it never works out. So
you mean Messier?
Yeah, Messier. But no, it worked out then, but it doesn't always work out. So that's the thing. A big signing doesn't mean anything. Sometimes that guy that people don't even know about, that's the guy that's going to help you win.
What's funny about Messier was that the second coming was not the second coming, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That was a 2000 to 2004 era.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was, yeah. You know what? Yeah. Well, that's another podcast.
Oh my God. Yeah. I need to get a Canucks fan on here and say, so tell us how you feel about Messier of 97. Because I feel like you talk to a Oilers fan, you talk to a Rangers fan, and you talk to a Canucks fan, and they all have very different views of Mark Messier.
That could be a whole show about players and their trading cards in those years, like Gretzky with the Blues, that kind of thing. Like these really weird, didn't quite work out situations for many players. That
Yeah,
happens.
Gretzky on the Blues is kind of like when you see Bobby Orr in a Blackhawks jersey. You're like, oh yeah, that happened. Although
Right.
with Orr, it was more nefarious means that he got there. His agent lied to him, and it was
Right.
a terrible thing. But like it's like when like Gretzky on the Blues, it's like, well, yeah, he did play there, and he probably would have stayed there if it wasn't for Mike Keenan. So
Yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting stories like that, but there's also some interesting stories about when it comes to the playoff leaders. I know there's a bit of a debate here over the Conn Smythe winner, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, if we just kind of look at the points, right? So you say, okay, Mitch Marner had the most points in the playoffs. Okay, that's great. Now, let's say he put up a hat trick in Game 6, but the Golden Knights lost 4-3 because Carter Hart has allowed 4 goals in every game, except for that one. He only allowed 2 goals, which is respectable, but not when your team doesn't score. So you can't blame that last one on him. But okay, so let's say Marner had a hat trick in Game 6, but they still lost. He should absolutely have been the Conn Smythe winner because he scored a lot of goals. He put up a lot of points. He did everything he could do, but it wasn't enough. That's that example of the superstar who is basically, I'm not saying he's pulling the team because a lot of guys were pulling that team, but you know what I mean, right?
But let me ask you this,
Sure.
sort of in a more general sense. I'm not a huge fan. I know it's an individual award, but I'm not a huge fan of having the playoff MVP be on the losing team. That kind of always irks me. And sometimes you don't have a clear star on the winning team. That's true, but you can find someone on the winning team to give it to, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think about like and I didn't watch this series because it was before I got into hockey, but like when Ron Hextall won it in 87, and he was the reason why the Flyers, I think that series went 7 games, and I think he's the
Yeah.
reason, it was 86, 87, and he's the reason why it went 7 games. So it was like he was the MVP, even though, they didn't win the series, but he's the reason why it went 7 games. So, I mean,
I say this for one reason. I think if you interviewed any MVP of a championship, that person was on the losing effort, they would have traded that trophy for the Stanley Cup, for example,
oh God, yeah.
in a heartbeat. And like, if I won MVP of a series, I'd be very happy because it means I had a great playoffs, but I didn't win the title. I didn't win the championship. And that trophy wouldn't be necessarily like front and center in my trophy case because that would be a reminder to me that we lost that series. So I don't know if people are saying Mitch Marner should have gotten it. I ultimately think Jordan Staal is worthy of it because he had a great last 3 games. He had a great playoffs in general, but the last 3 games. And also, he's on the winning effort, the winning team.
Yeah.
If there's a tiebreaker, it's going to be, oh, well, they won the trophy. They won the cup. You got to give it to him. It makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, another thing too, if Frederik Andersen had stayed in the series and ultimately got those last 3 wins for the Hurricanes, then he would have it would have been a compelling argument for him as well. Now, I don't know what's going on because,
by the way, I'm sorry to interject.
No, it's okay.
We both had predicted that Andersen would stay in goal. We were wrong. And maybe that was a gutsy move to go the other way.
I mean, well, here's the thing. So he not only did he not play in Game 4, he didn't suit up. He was just in plain clothes that day. I think they said he was the E-bug. But then they also recalled a goalie from the Chicago Wolves. By the way, the Chicago Wolves are in the Calder Cup Finals. Unfortunately, they're down 2-0 against the Toronto Marlies. Thought it'd be awesome if the Wolves won the Calder Cup and then the Carolina Hurricanes, or their parent club, won the Stanley Cup. Then that would be the first time since 95 that sort of thing happened. But so I mean, there's rumors like, is Frederik Andersen dealing with a concussion or some sort of injury?
Wouldn't they have said that though? I mean, I feel like they said nothing, and so to me, it felt like, oh, he's in the doghouse. Like, like they basically moving on from him.
I mean,
But
not only that, but they didn't dress him in games 4, 5, and 6.
Which is very strange. That to
They
me,
had Kochetkov as the backup.
yeah, that's really strange because if your goalie's getting lit up, don't you want to go back to Anderson? I mean, you want to go with like an unknown at this point, this deep in the series. I mean, maybe there was something there. There's an injury. There's something personal going on we don't know about, but it's not what I thought would happen, and it worked out for them. But ultimately, it'd be curious to see come September if he's on the team still, or if he's going to be traded, or if he's going to be sold off, or demoted to the minors or something. I don't think he deserves that. It seems harsh. I mean, ultimately, they did go back and forth between these goaltenders over the course of the season. He helped them get this far.
Well, it had to do with injuries too, because I mean, the way it seemed to be with the Hurricanes is that Anderson's the goalie of now, Kochetkov's their goalie of the future. Bussi was just picked up on waivers because Pyotr Kochetkov got hurt. Now,
yeah,
I kind of watched Bussi's play this year because I grabbed him for my fantasy hockey team somewhere in towards like the middle to the end of the season, and when he was doing really well. And I'm like, wow, this guy just kind of came out of nowhere and he's doing great, and so the thing is that like he was pretty much going to be the third stringer, but then I believe Kochetkov was still hurt early on in the playoffs, and so Bussi was just the backup, just because he was third on the depth charts. Now he's number 2. But then when Kochetkov got better, it was just like, well, just keep these 2 goalies in or on or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not sure what the thinking was there, but yeah, I mean, you look at like the leading scorers, Vegas with Marner and Eichel, and then Jackson Blake. And that's the thing, like Jackson, you look at like, okay, so third highest scoring in the playoffs, Jackson Blake. I would not have guessed that at the beginning of the playoffs, right? No. Fourth leading scorer, Taylor Hall, 19 points. Fifth, three-way tie for 5 with Nikolai Ehlers, Brett Howden, and Shane Theodore, right? So, yes, a lot of the Hurricanes were contributing, and that's what killed Vegas, is that it wasn't just the same 4 or 5, it was probably the same 4 or 5 guys doing most of the work, but it's just like so many people like contributed to that series, like in points, like I'm just going to just rattle this off really quick. Like just looking at in the playoffs, like you had Blake with 20 points, Hall with 19 points, Ehlers with 18 points, Stankoven with 16 points, Staal with 12, Gautspier with 12. How about a comeback for him? Shane Gautspier bounced around a bit. Sebastian Aho, 12 points. Seth Jarvis, 11 points. Andrei Svechnikov, 11 points. And I'll mention Keandre Miller with 9 points. But Miller played with the Rangers, and I thought he was going to be a better defenseman than, I mean, now he seems like he had a good year this year with the Hurricanes. I think this is his first year in
yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, what happened in New York? He just wasn't doing the thing. I mean, he's a
first
round pick.
He wasn't doing the thing. He was doing the thing until he wasn't. Then the whole team was kind of breaking down. And at some point, you have to basically hit the reboot button and get rid of players. It doesn't mean they're not any good, obviously.
Okay, I see. I understand.
He's won a cup here, and so I mean, the Rangers from last year are really not the last 2 years are really not a great indication of talent. But sometimes you got to solve these pieces and then hope to, bring in new ones. So yeah, Keandre Miller, when he got traded off, I was pretty upset. I thought, oh, he's a good player. Like I hate to see him go. And
he put up 43 points in 22-23. That's for a defenseman. That's really good. That's respectable. Yes, 34 assists and 9 goals. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm glad that he's been able to find sort of life somewhere else, because that's what usually happens. And sometimes players aren't happy, and if you're on a losing team, I mean, we know this. You're a Hawks fan. I'm a Rangers fan. These are tough years, and so you got players that are going to be around a couple of years, and they're going to want to leave, or the management wants them to go, and in that sense, that's a natural thing. But yeah, no, some of these names on the points list, for example, yeah, you never would have thought at the beginning of the playoffs these names could emerge and put up lots of points. I mean, Taylor Hall in fourth place there is pretty astonishing.
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought that either. And I wonder if Taylor Hall has scored a couple more goals. You know, he could have been in the conversation for the Conn Smythe, which is super interesting if that was the case. Obviously, if you're still leaning towards giving it to the guy on the winning team, obviously, if it wasn't Jordan Staal, I agree with you. Then they would have given it to Mitch Marner, and that would have been that. And if enough of the talent on the Hurricanes would have been spread out, like, hey, lots of guys have scored one goal, or lots of guys have scored 2 goals in the last couple of games. We really don't know who to give it to, and it wasn't like you scored the game winner in overtime. And it's not just the one play; it has to be over the course of the entire playoffs. That's always what we've been told. That's why McDavid won it a couple of years ago, because he had such an amazing playoffs. It wasn't just that series or that last game. And I get it. You know, in other sports, I think when, the Super Bowl, for example, you win like the player of the game, the MVP, it's because you had a great game. So always the quarterback on the winning side, right? Like that's always the case.
Or a defensive player.
Or a defensive player, but it's always going to be something like that as opposed to like over the course of the entire playoffs. Maybe it should be limited to the course of the series, of the final series, maybe, and not the entire playoffs, because nobody really cares what you did in the first round.
I think I'd like that idea better, because I remember the year that Patrick Kane won the Conn Smythe, and I remember we kind of looked at each other and were like, really? And it wasn't the year he won that game winner did that game winning goal against the Flyers in overtime. But we just kind of looked at each other. We're like, wait, really? And it's like, well, yeah, they looked at the whole playoffs, and yeah, he did really good in the whole playoffs. And like, yeah, okay. It just didn't feel like he wasn't, they needed him to win the cup. That's a given. But I don't know who I would have picked that year, but I can't remember now if I'm thinking of 13 or 15, but So anyway, some of the records, I know records that were set in this Stanley Cup final. Not all of them are records. Some of them are just interesting, but we talked last time about how games 1 and 2 was the first time in 108 years of the Stanley Cup final that teams have swapped multi-goal comebacks. So this team overcomes a 2-goal deficit to win game 1. This team overcomes a 2-goal or whatever deficit to win game 2. Okay, kind of, and I think that set the stage for the exciting series, because it was like, whoa, this team came back and won. Whoa, this team came back and won. And that's when I started thinking, okay, this is going to be a great series. No lead is safe. And then we even saw that in game 3, where even though the Hurricanes didn't win, they came back from a 4-goal deficit to tie it, forced double overtime. That same game, we saw Mitch Marner score the fastest hat trick in Stanley Cup final history at 6 minutes and 10 seconds, beating the record set by Maurice Richard almost 60 years ago. Carter Hart, for what it's worth, on the Golden Knights, became the first goalie to allow 4 goals in 5 consecutive games. I don't know if that's a record I'd want unless my team was winning all the games 8-4. So it's funny. It's like we won 4-3 or we lost 5-4, right? Like, so it's like, hey, Vegas, you got to score more than 4 goals a game. And I think that Hart played well, and then not as well in the finals, because we've talked about how you need to have a goalie that can play well, but they need to be able to steal you a game, or they need to just be able to like rise above, just a little bit above. Like if you think a goalie is like a B, they have to have an A game. You know what I mean? You can't have a C goalie in the finals, right? I think Edmonton tried that a couple times. It didn't work. What did I say? Insanity is trying the same thing and expecting different results.
Correct. Yes.
And in Edmonton has the same goaltending tandem 2 years in a row. But anyway, I know I'm picking on Edmonton, and that's old news.
Well, because they become a poster child for how to lose a Stanley Cup. So we're talking about that.
What the hell, man?
So we're comparing.
They could have picked up Brandon Bussi on waivers. I mean,
right.
If I'm the the GM of the Oilers, or if they hire that crazy coach, Mike Babcock, I don't know what I was going to call. I was going to call him Mike Bobcat, Mike Babcock. You know, I'm going to invite 25 goaltenders to training camp.
Right.
Because what the hell, man? I mean, I know good goalies are hard to come by, but
you don't need a good goalie. You just need a goalie to get hot at the right time. You don't need to
and that's the thing. I know that Bussi got hot at the right time, but the thing is that he did what he needed to do, and then he performed. Sometimes he did. He paid above his pay grade, as they'd say, right?
Yeah,
played above his pay grade.
Yes.
Right. And Hart was just consistent, and when he needed to raise his game, he didn't. But then again, I can't really blame him because I don't think he did bad. Like, I don't look at him and go, "Oh, he did terrible." Like, I mean, maybe there's a goal or two that was soft. I can't think of one.
You have the Hurricanes. You have the Hurricanes defense like smothering the Vegas offense to the point where like they weren't even getting enough shots on. So then it's hard to beat a team like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter who the goalie is at that point because it doesn't matter. If you're giving up like 4 goals and your team can only score 1 or 2, that's not gonna do it. That's not enough.
No.
That's what happened.
Yeah. And then on the other end, so then you had Brandon Bussi, who stepped in, made his playoff debut in the finals. And then he became the first goalie to make 2 starts, his first 2 starts in the Stanley Cup Finals and win both of them. And then, of course, when he played the 3rd game and got that shutout, he became the first goalie to make his first 3 career playoff starts in the finals and win all 3. So that's an insane stat / record right there.
It is.
But then you have Jordan Staal. And the more I looked into this, like just, I don't say looked into it, but the more when I put this information together, I was just like, yeah, this guy has to be the MVP, right? Okay. 5th player in Stanley Cup history to score 5 goals in 5 consecutive games. Well, he scored 6 goals in 5 games. He had that 2 goal game in game 4, the turning point game. Okay. So 5 goals in 5 games, joining the likes of Yvonne Cornwallis, Jean Beliveau, Maurice Richard, and Fred Cyclone Taylor. First player to go 17 years between Stanley Cup championships. Oldest player to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. And he had the best face-off percentage in Stanley Cup history at 68%. Stanley Cup final history, right? Like his face-offs were around 58% during the playoffs, but in the finals, when it really counts. And I think that's the thing. And you talked about making the MVP award for not how you did in all 16 games that your team won or however many games your team played. Yeah, you had 3 goals in a 8-5 loss. Okay, that's nice.
That pads your stats, but it doesn't mean anything.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And so when you look at the stats, because like when I was looking at his stats and I was just like, okay, he had 6 goals in the finals, but he had 2 goals. Excuse me. He had only had 2 goals in the previous 3 rounds. And he had 4 assists in the finals, but he only had 1 assist. Sorry, he had 3 assists in the so only 1 assist in the final, but still, I guess what I'm saying is like if you looked and said, "Oh, okay, this guy had 2 goals and 3 assists in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs," you wouldn't be thinking, MVP, there's my MVP. That guy's going to win. You know what I mean? That you would be like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, he's 37 and he's just plugging along and good for him, chipping in a goal every now and then, getting an assist every now and then."
Right.
Winning 56.8% of the faceoffs. And then, yeah, I only mentioned the 13 penalty minutes because he got in that fight. That fight in the first game, first round against the Senators. He and Brady Tkachuk dropped the gloves and fight. I mean, I don't say talk about setting the stage, but, and I'm sure it was Tkachuk's idea, but like still, I mean, okay, so the dude fights, The dude can win faceoffs. He can score goals when it matters. And I can't think of anything that matters more than the series tying game, the pivotal game of the Stanley Cup. He didn't score in the last game, but he didn't need to. His other guys did. He still won a lot of faceoffs. I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, the more I think about this, I can't argue. I don't want to argue with this. I don't
know who's making the argument, obviously.
No.
I don't think Vegas fans.
Taylor Hall had scored a few more goals, maybe. We'd say, okay, yeah, most points, whatever.
Maybe. I think with Jordan Staal, it's also like sentimental. Like, it's fun to see guys that are older, been in the league a while, have done a lot to get a lot of the spotlight. Because we talk about this in the hobby all the time. I talk about it all the time, I feel. But, everyone is focused on so many of just a few players all the time. This is every league. It's always like 4 or 5 guys that everyone talks about all the time. And then guys like this get forgotten. So when they win like a Conn Smythe, when they win the cup, people are like, wow, like they're kind of surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And it is surprising, but ultimately everything you mentioned indicates he deserves it. And he's been in the league a while. And it's good to see players. I feel like players are playing longer and they're doing more even in their old age. We talk about Ovechkin and Crosby, but they're still producing at a fairly high level. It's nice to see, maybe because I'm getting older, I root for old guys. So I like when older guys do stuff. And when you're 37, you're old, because there's guys in the league like who are 20. There's 19 and 20-year-olds in the league. When you're 37, you're ancient. And I know we're going to talk about trading cards soon. But when I went back to see his rookie cards, I'm like, wow, that was like a different era of the hobby. That's how old this guy is.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, I kind of said that Brent Burns wasn't still on the Hurricanes because he played on the Canes for a couple of years, and it would have been nice to see him get a cup with the team. Oh, by the way, just talking about what's it called? The cup. Obviously, we're talking about the Stanley Cup, but I'm thinking about like when they hand off the cup to the next player and the next player. And some people make a bigger deal about that. I always like it, but sometimes it's because it just kind of jogs my memory of like, oh yeah, that guy's on the team. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, that's...
It also tells you internally who they think is important and why they won the cup. Like, because the players decide that, I think.
Yeah, and I know that like the one year that the Ducks won the Stanley Cup in 2007, and Scott Niedermayer gets the trophy, and he passed it to his brother, Rob Niedermayer, who was an alternate captain, but Chris Pronger was the other alternate captain. And it's just like, okay, well, maybe Pronger's the better player. Maybe he's played longer, but, they're both alternate captains, and he's giving it to his brother. It's not like his brother was a black ace or something.
Yeah, but I think if you're Pronger, you're not going to be like, okay, these are two brothers having a moment. I'll get the cup next. Like, you know what I mean? Like, ultimately, I mean, you have to have a massive ego to be like, we won the cup, and now I'm mad that I'm the third guy to get the cup. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. And then I think about like how at the beginning of the games they were showing that little featurette about Ray Bourque winning the cup 25 years ago. Now that makes me feel old. That makes me feel old, because I finished college a little bit older. I wasn't 22 when I finished college, but that was my last year of undergrad. And I remember we all wanted Ray Bourque to win that damn cup. So, I mean, but now to look back and go like, oh my God, that was 25 quarter century ago.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Like the more Stanley Cups I watch, the more sports I watch, the more I'm like, was that really 20 years ago? Like when the Hurricanes won 20 years ago, like I remember that pretty vividly. And I'm like, that was 20 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
And then Ray Bourque, that was basically the Lifetime Achievement Award, which he earned. He deserved it. But yeah, it's funny when you hear about these milestones and you're like, wow, when we were younger and we were watching hockey in the 80s and 90s, so much of what had happened 20 or 30 years earlier was to me just basically something that I can see in a book, a documentary, or in a trading card, but I didn't live it. Now that I
Right.
haven't, now I've built up so much memory because the longer you live, you see more. And part of that is nice. Part of it also just starts to date you.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting. And we're talking about that because Jordan Staal is so old. No, but no, but
Well, what
because we're also old and we remember you have more institutional knowledge about trends and the past and what you saw. And because reading about something is very different from experiencing it even on TV. Like we've watched so many of these finals on television that they feel more real to me than something I read, than about, something I read about in the 70s because I wasn't around for it.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to say about Bork though is that I remember when the Avalanche won the cup, like Sakic just he picked up the cup and he just handed it to Bork. Like he
Right.
didn't like raise it up, skate around with it, and then pass it to Bork. Because I mean he had already this was his second cup. So he just grabbed it and just passed it to him. You know what I mean? And I thought that
Sure.
was such a classy thing. And here, what does Staal do? He gives the cup to Frederik Andersen, who basically got them to the finals with his 3 shutouts and his good performance up until probably the third game of the series, whether that's because he had mental struggles, mental lapse or an injury. We don't know, but I'm just saying. So, he gave him props. And then what I thought was cool was Freddie Anderson then goes to give the cup to Sebastian Aho, who's been with the team for 10 years. And Aho points to Taylor Hall, who's standing next to him. And
Right.
so then Anderson moves over and gives Taylor Hall the cup. And I thought, okay, that was really cool because Aho was like, he was probably, I think he's the longest tenured Hurricane. Well, he and Staal, I think Staal's probably been there a little longer maybe, but it's like the next longest player on the team.
Well,
And
I mean, by the way, you mentioned, I wanted to interject this to say, uh, Aho, I mean, they should have put his face on the side of a milk carton because where was he in this whole series? I mean, he was basically not there. So, I mean, and no, and kudos to him for pointing to Taylor Hall, and that's a classy move, and especially Aho is a great player. But in this series, in these playoffs, he really
Mhm.
didn't show up, and that's okay because if they had lost, then there'd be a lot of finger pointing, say, "Hey, what happened to this guy? He didn't put up any points. He didn't really do much." And then losing effort, you can do that. In a winning effort, then you're like, "Well, yeah, Sebastian Aho had a pretty quiet playoffs, but Taylor Hall did a lot more than we thought he would." So that's where it becomes a team effort, and that was a cool move. But like I mentioned earlier, I do like when the players do that because you get to see sort of internally in the dressing room in the locker room who they think you know contributed, and they're all very magnanimous ultimately. Because look, everyone's going to hold the cup. Everyone's going to get a day with the cup. They'll do whatever they want with it. They'll drink out of it. They'll do whatever they want with it, and it'll be fun. And they all know that. So, but it is fun to watch that. And I think almost in no other sport do you see that. I feel like in other sports, I'm thinking about the NBA championship or even the World Cup. Like, I just feel like the captain gets the trophy, and then it just becomes the thing between like players just like grabbing it and kind of passing it around, and everyone's doing their thing with it. But in hockey, it just seems like there's a pecking order to who should hold it next because holding the cup up is an effort. It's a very heavy trophy, and it's an iconic photo when you're holding it over your shoulders. And you mentioned, Ray Bork winning it. That was also the series where Patrick Waugh was the Conn Smythe winner. It's funny because we throw these names out there. These are like legendary names. Now, these are Hall of Famers.
yeah,
These are,
yeah.
Bork, Sakic, Waugh. I mean, these are like, big names. And, one has to wonder how many of these names we're talking about now will be in the Hall of Fame in 5, 10, 15 years. Who knows?
Yeah, Nicholas Delorier, who was a healthy scratch, raised the cup before Brandon Bussi did.
hmm,
Just kind of went, it made its rounds and whatever. Players
right,
figure it out.
sure.
I think it's nice. And I like the fact that like the players that don't suit up for the games will still put on their uniforms and come out and look like part of the team. Because
Yeah.
I remember in '93, again dating myself, but when the Canadians won in '93,
Yeah.
one of my favorite players, Dennis Savard, who had played his first 10 years of his career with the Blackhawks. Blackhawks legend, has his number retired. He's in the Hall of Fame, all that, blah, 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 whatever. He didn't play in the cup clinching game. And he came out, and I saw like a little story about that. It was like one of those little NHL. The NHL had like this show that was like kind of had like this kind of crudely animated show of like players telling their stories. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, it was narrated, but it was like animated.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess the thing was that Savard had an injury, but he could play. Like he had an injury, but it was a minor injury. He could play. The coach wants to put him in, and he told the coach, he said, "Nah, put in this rookie so that he can get his name on the cup too." You know, like let him take my spot. And so when the Canadiens won the cup, Savard's out he's out on the ice in a suit and a tie. And the players raised him up too, like the cup, because they thought that was just such a classy move. You know what I mean? Like, let him take my spot, and then he can, you know, because if you play 1 minute of a cup final game, you get your name on the cup. Anybody could get a ring. I mean, the manager of ticket sales can get a Stanley Cup ring, but to get your name on the cup, there are certain rules. I mean, I even remember watching teams, they'll be like, oh, they're putting in their backup goalie during the power play so that he could just be on the ice for like 10 seconds or whatever. Yeah, just long enough to say, oh, he's been on the ice. Okay, he's going to be on the cup.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about hockey cards as we wind this show down, because today Upper Deck announced that they are putting out an Upper Deck Stanley Cup Championship set. This is an EPAC exclusive, 10 cards, $6.99 per card. You don't know which card you get. It comes in a pack. Eventually, the cards will be printed and shipped to you. There are also parallel versions of the cards, including, I don't know, like different colors. I know there's autographed parallel versions. Do I like this set? Yeah, I think it's cool. Am I going to buy it? No, because $70 for a 10-card set of a team that I wanted to win, but not a team that I necessarily collect. I don't know. It just seems like I think about like sometimes like Topps Now does this thing with their print on demand stickers where they'll do like these sticker sets that are like you get all 10 of them at once. Like they did something with Ovechkin when Ovechkin broke Gretzky's goal scoring record, and they had like a 10 sticker set, and you could just buy the whole thing in one shot. Not like, oh, you might get this one, you might get that one, and then you end up buying 14, 25 packs, whatever. I don't know.
I always think that these print-on-demand cards and these chase things and all this stuff that comes out after somebody wins a title, a team wins a championship, is really for the fans of that team. Like if you're a Hurricanes fan, you're a diehard, you collect, you're gonna chase this, you're gonna try to get it to come together. I feel like fans of a winning team will drop so much money in the aftermath of winning because they're so excited and they want to own pieces of it. And so, but you're right. This is the kind of thing I'm not going to buy, and I'll probably never see anywhere. But it's cool that the companies do this. The Upper Deck is doing something like this, because if they did nothing, we would sit here complaining and go, they didn't do anything. It's so weird, and why would you not do that? And blah blah blah.
Well, so I remember when they did a 2013 set for the Blackhawks. It was a box set, and I remember it was like $20. And it had every player who was in the playoffs. So it had like 26 or 27 player cards, had a few season highlights. And then I think it had like a big panoramic card that was like the team photo. It was probably the perfect set, right? You got one card of each guy that played in the playoffs, a few season highlights because they wanted to make it up to like 30 cards or whatever. And then a team photo, right? Can't get better than that. The problem was, go ahead.
Well, then we're living in a universe. I'll say parallel universe. We're living in a universe where parallels, chase, are become integral elements of the hobby. You're talking about just like plucking $20 down and get 30 cards. You put them in a little case, and you're happy. And
the problem was that they sold well for like the first month, and then you would eventually go to DA Card World, when they'd be at a show and they'd be blowing them out for $10 because they couldn't get rid of them, right? Like however many they produced was too many. Yeah. So then in other years, they would do like these 10 card sets that they would give to like stores. Like when the Penguins won one of the years, they sent these little, maybe it was 6 cards or 8 cards or 10 cards, and they'd send it to local card stores and then they'd give them away, right? Okay, so giveaways, those are nice, but they don't make money. Box sets, I think, are great, but outside of that little window of like, yeah, we won the Stanley Cup, then it's just like, then it just becomes this thing that just sits and nobody buys. So at least something like this, if 20 of them sell, they're going to sell more than 20. But if 20 of them sell, great, they'd make 20. If 200 of them sell, if 2,000 of them sell, you know what I mean? Then they can print as many as they need to. And I'm okay with that. I just think my tolerance is $5 a card. That's what I just want to pay. You know what I mean? Like that's, I don't get the $6.99, $7.99, $11.99. It just, for one card.
Yeah, it's a lot of money that doesn't hold its value, and ultimately it's going to sit in the box and get dusty. If you're a Hurricanes fan, I mean, it's not a premium thing. But look, the car companies are doing everything they can to try to bank on that enthusiasm. This happened with Topps right after the men won the gold and Olympic hockey.
Yeah.
And they, and those cards are, I mean, I'm not saying worthless, but they're not. The enthusiasm is subsided, and nobody really cares anymore. And people have moved on. I
had to fight myself to not buy those because they were like $9.99 or $11.99, and I was just like, okay, I might get an autograph, the one autographed card, but it's unlikely, for $11.99 or $9.99, and maybe I'll get a gold version instead of the regular version. But then after a while, I just go on eBay and just buy them for like $5 because what would somebody do? They'd buy 50 of them. They'd hope to get the blue parallel that's numbered to 5 or whatever, and then they'd sell that one for a lot of money, or an autograph or something, and then they'd sell the base version for like $5. And I should go back and finish my Olympic cards because I only got a few of them. But now, talking about the probably the 2 most notable players in the finals, not counting Mitch Marner. Marner didn't win the Stanley Cup. He didn't win the MVP trophy. And I feel like people who collect Mitch Marner are going to collect Mitch Marner anyways. But what this series did is it drew the spotlight to these 2 players, Jordan Staal, who we talked about a ton already, and Brandon Bussi, who we talked about a bit already. And I looked up their young guns, and I just wanted to see where they were over the past couple of days, right? Like, and as of this recording, I mean, I looked, and Jordan Staal, young gun from 06-07. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, and that's selling for about 25 to 50 raw on eBay. Now, Brandon Bussi's young gun from the 24-25 Upper Deck Series 2 set, that's selling for about $15 to $30 raw. And if you're wondering, why is he wearing a Bruins jersey? He never played for the Bruins. And I'd say, yeah, you're right. He never played for the Bruins. He was a backup goalie for a game because that's all Upper Deck needs to make a card of a goalie. You're a backup for a game, you get a card. That was the excuse. Somebody told me that they called it the Rick DiPietro rule because all the companies wanted to make cards of Rick DiPietro when he was drafted first overall by the Islanders. The Islanders assigned him to the Chicago Wolves, who back then were in the, I think they were still an IHL team. Yeah, this would have been like 2000, I think. And 2000, 2001 season. That was the last season of the IHL. And so when they called DiPietro up to the Islanders just to be the backup and to start getting him some experience, and I think he played, but like it was just like as soon as he was on the bench, they're like, okay, that qualifies as being in a game, so you can make his rookie card now. So yeah, I know you did an article for Puck Junk maybe a month ago about how Stanley Cup playoff performance doesn't necessarily affect long-term card values. Do you want to talk about that a little more and maybe in reference to these 2 guys?
Yeah, there's a lot of data points and a lot of, a lot of years, last 25 years, I'd say, of data that shows that, yeah, these guys get a bit of a bump and then maybe they may be at a new plateau, but often the price just goes back down. Now, specifically to these two players, because these two are not the kind of players that anybody was collecting massively before. So this is not like if Ovechkin had become MVP. I mean, he's already got a huge following and a huge value, right? These are guys that, like you mentioned, the prices, these are fairly affordable raw. The truth is, if you look, I think Brandon Bussi, if you were trying to find his young guns graded, there's very few of them because nobody got it graded. Because why would they bother? Why would
Right.
they have bothered before this? And there won't be a run on these at all. Like whatever people are paying for right now is probably the highest it'll be, and it'll probably subside. I think after the national or by September, the price will either go back down or this becomes the new plateau. They go from 25 to 50, and then they stay at 50 forever. You know, and that's just what it is. And yeah, the hobby gravitates towards 3, 4, 5 players generally. It's like almost like the biggest trading stocks are put together like in a fund. People, the same thing. It's like there's Gretzky, there's Ovechkin, there's Crosby. I mean, let's make David, and then that's basically it. There's 4 of those, and then there is maybe Bedard and maybe Celebrini and Schaefer because he's a rookie of the year, and then those names change though, and then that's it. That's like the trading index almost. Like that's the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking on eBay to see just other players, like other rookie year cards of like Jordan Staal, for example. I mean, it's like, how old is Jordan Staal? It's like, yeah, like the old joke, how old is he? Well, he's so old that in 2006, 7, he's in the Beehive rookies, which is super cool. He also has a Flair card. We talked about that Flair set recently. He's in the 06, 07 Flair,
A Flair
set.
Showcase or
Yeah.
Fleer, Fleer?
No, Flair Showcase.
Flair Showcase, yeah.
Yeah. He's in that. Hey, probably if you dig deep enough, he probably has a Fleer card. I mean, he's not a junk wax guy, obviously. He's from the aughts.
Right.
But he's got cards that are in sets that we consider kind of interesting or iconic now. They're old enough where we would do a retrospective on it, so he's been in the league a while, and it was kind of fun to go back and look at some of the cards. I have a few, but not really because they're in complete sets. But most of them, I'm just looking on eBay and just looking and going like, wow, yeah, he's in this, he's in that. And of course, he's in a Penguins uniform. And I wish Tim was here to talk about that a little bit because he probably has memories of him playing for the Penguins. I really don't, I'm not like following this guy's career closely over the years, and just interesting to go back and see. And someone is selling on eBay, for example, 4 rookie cards. I think 2 of them are the same. I forgot what set they're victory cards. One of them is behind. All 4 of them are $25. I mean, that's not a lot of money. And if you are a fan of the Hurricanes or this particular player, this is a chance to pick up these cards. Is he a Hall of Famer? I don't know.
Yeah, I was looking at his stats right now, and okay, he's got 1,400 regular season games. He's played almost, like 19 years now.
Right.
So yeah, 19 years. 318 goals, 429 assists, 747 points. So I think that like forwards, we always do that, or I always do that. Like 400 goals, it's a conversation. 500 goals, it should be a no-brainer. You know what I mean? 600 assists, it's a conversation. More than 700 assists, it should be a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Or any combination thereof. When you have like a guy who has like 600 goals, but 318 assists or whatever, you go, well, but he had 600 goals, and that's insane. You know what I mean? Like if you look at like Brett, I don't have his stats in front of me, but Brett Hull's goals versus assists, right? Like,
right.
He didn't get there because he was a setup man. He got there because he was a goal guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm kind of mixed on him. He may never be a Hall of Famer. That does not help his card values. And then just one last note on Brandon Bussi. Goaltender cards tend to not, um, stay at the same pace as guys who score goals, for example. So, unless you're Patrick Waugh or you're some amazing goaltender, there's goaltenders in the Hall of Fame who don't have rookie cards that are worth a ton of money. So,
Right.
I'm thinking of Tom Barrasso, for example. So it's interesting. So, I mean, these are cards that if people want them, they probably shouldn't buy them today because they're probably at the highest they're ever going to be. They can wait a couple of months and they'll go down. But as you mentioned, there's a few sales already on eBay because obviously people gravitate to this when, we did a search just like everybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have them and you want to offload them, now's the time to do it because you can probably get, $50 raw. That's pretty good for a card that maybe was worth half that before the playoffs started. So, and I don't think any of these players are going to, we'll see them at the national in terms of in the showcases. I don't think there'll be no demand. I would be stunned if at the national people will ask you, Sal, hey, do you have Brandon Bussi Young Guns? Do you have a Jordan Staal Young Guns card? I mean, I would be shocked.
I think I'm sure one person will ask me for a
Staal.
Probably for a Staal. It won't be like the year the light, the
Cale
2
McCarr
years
one.
Cale McCarr, that was insane. I couldn't even keep base cards.
But his rookie had been pretty recent before then. That helps.
Yeah, but I mean, that helps. That's the thing, though, is that like when a guy does really well and his rookie card is from like 20 years ago, the people that want the card, now, I'm not talking about the collectors. I'm talking about the investors, the flippers, the bro case crowd. And that's okay because it takes all kinds. You know what? I need everybody to buy cards to make this work. You know what I mean? Sometimes I've sold stuff to the bro case guys who are just going to turn around and grade it. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm happy that you bought this card for me. Now it's whatever you want to do with it. You know what I mean? Like if he goes and he grades it and it gets a 10 and he sells it for 10 times what he bought it from me, well, you know what? I made my little money. He's going to make his money. He also took risk. He also paid for the rating. You know what I mean? It's all fine. But like most of the time they don't say, hey, I want this rookie card of this guy from 20 years ago. No. It's just anybody, like even McDavid is kind of fallen out of favor and he's the best player in the world. And yet, I mean, once upon a time, I could not have enough McDavid cards. People were just buying everything. And then it just kind of hit that point where now it's just like, his stuff doesn't
I'll give you, because he's been around too long now, but I'll give you a
right.
If the Canadiens had won the cup, Lane Hudson,
yes,
people would, because he was a rookie, 2 years ago? So that would resonate with people, the people that are in this game. They're like, oh, I remember that. We were ripping him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Nobody was ripping Jordan Staal cards 20 years ago. Nobody. And
it's funny because I opened a case of 06-07 Series 2. I bought a whole case, 10 boxes. Was it 10 boxes? I think it was 10. Was it 8 boxes or 10 boxes? Shoot, I can't remember now. But it was a lot of freaking boxes. It was a lot of packs. That was back when there were 24 packs.
And
I got them because
when they had packs that were just base cards.
Yeah. Inserts were a little less frequent, and you'd still get about 3 jersey cards per box, believe it or not. Maybe a little less because these are retail packs, but I got them at 50% off. So it was like through the Upper Deck store, and I had like a 50% off coupon. So I ended up paying. It ended up coming out to like $36 for a 24-pack box. So I basically bought a case.
That's pretty good.
I got 1 Jordan Staal Young Gun. And I was happy because I was just trying to get 1 of each Young Gun. But I ended up getting 3 Evgeny Malkin Young Guns. And I was okay with that. Like if I had gotten 2 and 2, I would have been like, all right, that's cool. But I mean, Malkin was the rookie of the year that year. Staal was like 3rd or 4th on their depth chart, like looking like when the Penguins won the cup. Of course, Tim's not here to talk about the Penguins, which they're just going to rub it in that we're talking about the Penguins. But Staal was like the third or fourth line center that year, but he was like young and he was behind like Crosby and Malkin. So of course you're going to be the third line center when you play on a team with Crosby and Malkin. And now he's kind of like still the third line center, but for different reasons, because he's older.
He's old.
And then, I'm sure somebody will ask for these guys cards, but I don't think there's going to be like a huge run on them. Like, even like when Jonathan Marchessault won the Conn Smythe a couple of years back when the Knights won the Cup, nobody was like, hey, do you got any of his young guns? Do you have any of his, nobody was like, I did sell some of his cards, but it was kind of more like people just saw them and said, oh, that's a nice card. And they bought it. It wasn't like, do you have his Cup rookie or whatever?
Right.
So, So just wrapping this one up, final thoughts. One thing I want to mention about Bussi, because I'm looking at the Hurricanes, their salary cap right now, and I'm looking who is signed for the 26-27 season, because the first question that we usually ask is, can the team repeat? It's hard to repeat in this league. It's hard to repeat because your players get tired because they play a long season. But I don't know. I mean, they played a long season, but they had a lot of time off. They had like 8 days off, I think, after winning the first round, like 7 or 8 days. And in the second round, they had like 11 days off. So they were the Hurricanes were a well-rested team. Like they weren't playing a 7-game series and a 7-game series. And were players playing hurt? Yes. Were guys probably playing a little injured? Yeah, that always happens. But man, they had a lot of downtime. And if you got an elbow injury and you got 11 days to recover, that's going to help. So I don't know if they're as war-torn as, say, like the Florida Panthers were after their second Cup. And the other thing I'll say is that they have everybody signed through next year. The only guys they don't have signed are, you ready for this? Nicholas Delorier. Okay. Mike Riley. Okay. Young defenseman Alexander Nikishin is an RFA, so they'll probably tender him an offer. The only other UFA they have is Frederick Anderson.
Well, I don't think he's going to be around. That's just my guess if I had to guess early. But back to back, so you mentioned the Panthers. They did it in 24-25. Before that, the Lightning did it, in 2021? So we've had some repeat. I guess it would be from Florida to do it. But we've had some back-to-back, and then the Penguins before that, was it 16-17?
Yeah.
They won it. So it's not unheard of in the last 10, 15 years for teams to go back-to-back. But having said that, this team looks older to me. It looks like they were able to catch lightning in a bottle here. I don't know. I could see the Golden Knights coming back to the final before the Hurricanes do it. Not because I'm a Golden Knights fan, I'm not. But I do think they have more talent and they have it more spread out. Now, having said that, there's other teams out there that are probably going to, be contenders. And we're not going to do a preview of next season now. We go until October to do that. But just sort of hot take, like what this looks like, what this team looks like. This team looks like the culmination of 8 years of building, not the idea of like building a dynasty. And there's no dynasties anymore. I don't really believe that, and there aren't any anymore in any professional league, because the money is so spread out. There's so much free agency, all that stuff. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if next year we have a team that didn't even make the playoffs win the Cup. For example, that could happen, or they get to the final.
So like the Florida Panthers didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm looking. Of course, I'm going to sound smart because I got all the numbers in front of me. But I'm looking at, not only do they have all those players signed up, at least through next season, but okay, Sebastian Aho, and you're right, he was quiet, and he's also the highest paid player on the team at $9.75 million. Okay, so Aho's 28, Ehlers is 30, Svechnikov is 26, Seth Jarvis is 24, Logan Stankoven 23. Awesome pickup, by the way. Remember they got Mikko Rantanen?
Yeah.
And Rantanen didn't want to stay, so then they had to move him, and then they got Stankoven, and it seemed like, okay, well, Rantanen seemed like he was the better player, but the better player is the player who wants to play for your team and then performs for your team. And so, yeah.
And Stankoven was a rookie, 2 years ago?
Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yeah. So he's young. I mean, he's going to be...
He's 23.
He's going to be the future of a future piece for this franchise for sure, because he had a great series too.
Jackson Blake, 22. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who didn't play in the finals, which I don't know why, because I'm not a Caniac, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but I thought that was a little, he was a scratch for whatever reason, but he's 25. Taylor Hall is 34, Jordan Martinook, 33, Jordan Staal, 37, William Carrier, 31, Mark Jankowski, 31, Eric Robinson, 31, and then, like I said, Delorier, he's 35. Oh, he's a little older than Hall, and he's probably not coming back. And then you got Keandre Miller, who's 26, Jacob Slavin, who's 32, Sean Walker, who's 31, Shane Gottspear, who's 33, Jalen Chatfield, who's 30, Mike Riley, who's 32, and then Alexander Nikishin, who's 24. So I guess if anything, their decor looks a little older. But you know what? I think if your defensemen are under 35, I think if all your forwards are between 30 and 35, I think you're in trouble. But I think if most of your defensemen are between 30 and 35, it's probably okay.
It'll be interesting to see if Bussi becomes their starter and whether or not he goes on to have a very good career.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I was doing when you were talking about one of the many great points you were making, I'm not sure which one, but I was looking up older goaltenders, right? Like Bussi gets in the league at 27. He's 27 now, and I think, let's see, he was born in June, so he would have been 27 all season, right? And you go, all right, that's kind of old. Well, you remember a guy named Tim Thomas?
How old was he?
Well, he was born in 74, and he made his NHL debut in 2002, so he would have been 28. Okay. But he didn't become a regular. He only had 4 games in 02-03. He became a regular for the Bruins in 05-06, so he was 31.
Wow.
29 when he made his, or 28 or 29 when he made his NHL debut, and 31 when he became a regular. And he was a good player for that short amount of time. I mean, at the end it kind of petered out. Then you look at, maybe you've heard of this player, famous Toronto, I know you've heard of this player, Johnny Bower. Johnny Bower was like 30 years old when he made his NHL debut at the Rangers in 53. So he was born in 25, so 35, 45. So he was 28. He wasn't 30. He was still pretty up there, though.
Well,
and there's also rumors that Johnny Bower lied about his age, because he was actually older than he said he was, because he wanted to try to have a longer career. So he said that he was younger than he really was. So Bower, 28, and then you have let me see here. Hatshek was, well, he was 25, but he came out of a communist country, so he didn't really get to leave for the NHL until he was 25. So I mean,
but so speaking of, so 25 is interesting, because, like, for example, Jordan Binnington was 22 when he made his debut, and then he won the Cup 3 years later at 25.
Right.
So I mean, goalies could be all over the place. I think goalies can get a little older, and it's okay. I'm not, I just feel like in the case here, is he just too young to be your starter? And will they go with a starter and not go this back and forth? the two goalies means you have no goalie kind of thing, as opposed to
Well,
no, he's our guy. We're going to go with this guy. He's going to play 60% of the games, maybe more. And is he too young for that? Did he just do really well in the last 2 games here, 3 games here? Is he going
maybe he did, but they signed him for a 3-year contract.
Right.
And then they also have Kochetkov for another year. And Kochetkov was, supposed to be their goalie of the future. And maybe he's not. But they still I could see the Hurricanes going with those 2 goalies. Because Bussi did well enough during the regular season, and he did well enough in his limited playoff appearances. And maybe it's lightning in the bottle, maybe not.
Maybe he's earned it. At least the coaching staff can say, maybe this guy's earned it. We got to give him a shot.
So I think they have their 2 goalies. They got that figured out, and then they got pretty much everybody else under contract. So I mean, it's possible. That's all. But I mean, of course, maybe the Colorado Avalanche will retool and be a little better next season. Maybe the Lightning will figure it out, because I think we were all a little surprised that the Lightning got eliminated, but maybe not. I don't know.
Montreal, same thing. Maybe they can figure it out. Toronto, maybe they can figure it out. I mean, there's a couple teams out there that need to, the Oilers, can they figure this out? There's a couple teams on there that Dallas, can they figure it out? There's a couple of teams out there that potentially could be in this position. A year from now, we could be talking about one of those teams. So,
and that's what makes us exciting, is that we don't know. We can guess. We could say, oh yeah, they got their goaltending situation figured out, and maybe they don't. I mean, how many times have we seen a team acquire a goalie or think, okay, now we're going to make this goalie our number 1 goalie, and then it just doesn't work out, and I don't know, but I'm happy for the Hurricanes. I'm happy for the fans of the team. I always felt that the Hurricanes were a team that tried hard but fell short, but I never blamed them. They weren't good enough, but it wasn't because they weren't trying to be good. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like they honestly tried to put the right pieces in the place, and they fell short. And it wasn't like, oh, well, the team is being cheap and they're only spending to the cap floor, or they're riding on 1 or 2 really good players and everybody else is making league minimum. You know what I mean? They're not they're not a team that overperformed looking at the players that they had. They were a team that was always a contender, and I always felt kind of bad for them, because it was just man, they just fall short, and just one of these years, I just don't want them to fall short. And this is the year. So I'm happy for them.
I agree. No, I agree that it's nice to see a team like this come together and put some exciting hockey together for all of us to enjoy.
So you got a lot of soccer to watch, no hockey to watch. We'll have a draft to talk about in a couple of weeks. We'll have a national to talk about in a couple of weeks. We'll have Fanatics Fest to talk about. And
I'll give you some data points here. We have 30 days to Fanatics Fest, and we have 44 days to the National. So a very busy summer for us collectors and people in the collecting space. And that'll make up for the fact that there is no hockey for us to watch. I have the World Cup, so I'll be busy, but most of our listeners and viewers who maybe just watch hockey will have a bit of a break. We've had a very long season. The NHL was fun. We had the Olympics. 2026 was a really fun hockey calendar year. And look, we'll enjoy the summer, enjoy the warm, enjoy the beach. And then, as you get to September and October, the air gets a little crisper, and then you get that first hockey game, we'll all be into it again. So it'll be nice. So a rite of passage, a little bit of a break is nice. And for us collectors, we get to talk about hockey all summer, because like I said, we have Fanatics Fest. The NHL will be there. We have the National, and we'll both be there. So, and you'll have a booth there, and we'll have plenty to talk about, and plenty to speculate on, and plenty to buy and sell. And then the beauty of the hobby is to talk about the past. That's really where we, to be nostalgic about past sets, past players, and trying to finish those sets that all of us are trying to feverishly put together. So
I think, this year I won't be looking for cards, because I'll be selling. I'll be at booth 58. I'll talk more about that as we get closer to the National. But there's just I need a few cards to finish my 63-64 Parkhurst set. I know when we went to the expo a couple years ago, I was trying really hard to find those cards, and nobody had the ones that I needed. And I'd rather buy them in person where I can look at them and check the quality and whatever. Sure. But it's exciting, and, it'd be okay to take a little break from hockey. I mean, of course, I'm going to watch the draft. And, of course, in September, I'm going to be figuring out how I can stream the Blackhawks rookie camp scrimmage against the Minnesota Wild rookie camp team or what, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So we'll get to that point. But right now I'm just like, okay, maybe I'll get caught up on some TV shows, watch some movies, or I always got something to do. So, yeah, good season.
It was a good show. Always fun to recap the year, and it worked out nicely.
Thank you all for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you'd like to support this podcast, you could do so by purchasing a t-shirt at shop.puckjunk.com. And if you like to read, check out the newsletter at puckjunk.com/newsletter. And until next time, collect what you like.